People are always surprised when I say that I've spoken 127 languages, but that comes with a caveat. Let me explain. If you're seeing this for the first time, I'm El Cherise, and I'm the host of the Speaking Tongues podcast, the podcast where we discuss language and culture all over the world. Literally all over the world. 6 continents, over 180 countries. And after 177 episodes, including a few that didn't make it to air, I have learned a lot about our world languages. So I just want to share 5 things that I've learned about our languages from all over the world. But first, go ahead and like this video and make sure that you're subscribed to this channel if you want to learn more about our world languages and our cultures from the people who live them and speak them every day. So I've always been pretty obsessed with languages, and when I started this podcast, it was because I wanted to speak to people who were learning different languages from different parts of the world, and I really wanted to get an understanding of how they managed to learn so many languages and why I couldn't do the same thing. But slowly over time, what was more interesting to me was to actually talk to people about their languages and talk about their cultures and talk about their heritage. And that's how the show slowly evolved from being more of a language learning podcast into more of a language and culture appreciation podcast. Now, we always talk a little bit about language when we're doing the show, but it's more of a celebration about life and joy, sometimes sorrow and pain. We always make sure we talk about food or music or dance or some kind of art, but I want to take you through these things that I've learned about languages as I'm having these conversations with people. And keep in mind to date that we've covered 127 languages. So the first thing that I've learned in doing all of these episodes is that colonization and also English language dominance has really done a number on us. I think it's really done a disservice to smaller languages, to smaller regional languages, in the way of forcing some languages to be minoritized and some languages being undervalued. There are regions of the world that have so much linguistic diversity. And I think that in a lot of ways, especially here in the US, I feel like we wouldn't even have an opportunity to know how linguistically diverse some places are. Looking at the linguistic diversity in West Africa, I think is really, really fascinating because we have so many languages that are spoken tribally. We have so many languages that are spoken within communities. And then we also have bigger language groups as well, such as Igbo or Hausa or Wolof and etc. But I think it's really interesting when you can look at a country and you see, okay, well, what is the dominant language and who are these languages mostly spoken by? And then you realize that there are hundreds of languages in this region, hundreds of languages, even in some countries alone. And oftentimes there's even, there's a dominant language that exists there, but then sometimes it's that colonial language too that's kind of suppressing some of the minoritized languages or smaller languages. Thinking about other regions of the world, the Caribbean, definitely, because I have a special place in my heart for the Caribbean, being someone of Caribbean descent myself, and seeing how the region is so often looked at as a destination for tourism and a destination for enjoyment and vacation, and often ignoring the culture that exists there, often ignoring the language that is spoken there by the people who live there. And I think what's so interesting is that a lot of us growing up speaking a Creole or speaking a Patois, for example, heard things in our childhood like, this is not proper English, or this is broken English. And I think, or broken French or Spanish or whatever the colonial language is. What's so interesting about doing this podcast is that I've had a chance to reflect on the way that we classify our languages, the way that we talk about our languages. And I've had an opportunity to not only practice some of these words with my guests who have been so wonderful to share proverbs and words of wisdom with me and with our audience in these languages, but I think it's forced me and encouraged me to reframe the way that I think about language, the way that I think about what gets to be called a language and who gets to tell the stories of these languages. There are so many people that I've spoken to on this show who are all over the world and working so hard to preserve their languages. They're working so hard to revitalize their languages, or maybe even revive their languages in some case. And I think that it's so important to do this work and support this work that's being done. And I'm so happy to be in a position that I can do that with this platform. Another thing that I've learned from doing this show is actually having this conversation about what is a dialect and what is a language. And it's been really interesting hearing feedback from listeners of the show, or even people who just found the show and listened to one episode, when they hear me and my guests refer to something as a language that they've commonly been told or they've commonly believed is a dialect. I think it actually raises the question of like, who gets to call a language, or who gets to determine what is a dialect. It's been really interesting to see this framing that's going on around the world with certain people from certain parts of the world doing this kind of work to revitalize their languages or to change common perceptions about language. I think one thing that really stood out to me was early on in creating this show in the first year back in 2020, I've connected with a number of really amazing Sicilians. You know, coming from New York and getting to know Italian Americans and Sicilian Americans and people who speak the language, and they'll call it, you know, they speak dialect. And we know as Italian learners, Italian speakers, we're very familiar with the word dialetto. Getting to actually have conversations with Sicilian people and getting to hear their language and hear them explain and talk about their language and their customs and their history. It's been really eye-opening to see that Sicilian is not a dialect of Italian. Sicilian is its own beautiful, wonderful thing. I think another thing that's really amazing is getting to see and getting to hear stories of people who speak Creoles and speak Pidgins. And this is something that a linguist can speak to better than I can. But I think this is something that says a lot about stratification of society and who gets to receive an education and what language an education is received in, and who gets to determine whose language is legitimate or not. It's amazing to connect with so many people who are doing the work of destigmatizing what it means to speak their Creole, what it means for them to speak their language, and to have it become an official language, you know, as conversations are happening in Jamaica about that, as it's happened in Haiti, which I think is so beautiful. I see so many amazing Caribbean creators who are doing the hard work of taking away the stigma and the shame from some people that may have felt from previous generations like it wasn't okay for them to speak their language. And that's been really beautiful to see. And I feel so grateful to be able to use this platform to support the people who are doing that hard work of building their communities and upholding their language. I also say that I've grown to like really be a champion, and I love Creole languages because to me, they just sound like magic. So I think the third thing that I would say that I've learned from speaking 127 languages on this podcast is just how emotional language can be and how emotional language is. Language connects us to so much. It connects us to other people. It connects us to other cultures, other societies. It connects us to the past and the present as well. But it connects us to family. It connects us to family we have, family we've lost. It connects us to family that we're growing or family that we yearn for. I think I've learned that a lot of people take language for granted, or they think that language acquisition or becoming somebody who's multilingual is a superpower or something that you have to be predestined to be able to do. Hearing so many people talk about how the role that their mother or grandmother or father, grandfather aunts, bisabuela, bisabuelo, have passed down traditions with them through food, through music, through style of dress. People have told me so many memories of their grandparents on the show. And I don't take that for granted at all, because I think it shows me, and hopefully it shows my audience, how language is really so fragile. And a lot of times it's all we have. All we have to really connect us to a culture, what we have to connect us to the people who raised us and the people who taught us what we know. And it's really emotional. We've had some really emotional moments on the show, on the podcast, good and bad emotions, but it's really opened my eyes, to not take language for granted and actually see how important it is that we use our words, and to see the kind of weight that our words carry. I want to tell you the fourth thing about that I've learned from speaking all these languages is that there's so much human philosophy coded into a lot of our languages around the world. I think it's really so cool because you can tell so much about a society of people based on the grammar sometimes. So I had this really fascinating conversation with a linguist from Tibet, Yula, and we talked about her language of Choskev. There's like a way of talking about if you're going with someone together, but you're not going with this other person. And it's like, it made me have so many questions about how we view community in her community. Certain languages, Yoruba is one that I remember specifically about not having future tense. And I know there are more languages that don't have future tenses, but we talked about in Yoruba not having a future tense, and I can't imagine not having a future tense. I mean, as a language learner, I'd love to not have to learn the future tense. It really helps you understand just how small you are in this world, just how your language may be significant, but it's not the center of the universe. The fifth and final thing that I've learned on this show, everybody is so proud of their language. Everybody is so proud. People are so happy to talk about their foods. People are so happy to talk about their cultural festivals and rituals. They're so happy to talk about their history. I think people are proud to share their culture. People are eager to share their culture. People are eager to teach you how to say something in their language. People are eager to share their foods with you, their recipes with you. I want to leave on that because I want people to feel empowered, and I want people to feel empowered to be curious and respectful of other people's cultures, and learn to ask questions and not lead with assumptions. Learn to lead with respect and talk to people with respect. Because I think more likely than not, you'll find that a lot of people are willing to share. A lot of people are willing to open up about their history and their culture and their language, as long as you do it respectfully. I think that I have a very unique perspective in being able to have had the last 5 years talking to so many people about their language, and I really am so grateful from the bottom of my heart. I'm so happy. I'm so grateful for every guest who has come and spoken to me about the language that they learn, or the language they speak, or the language that they are connected to culturally. I have a very unique perspective in being able to do that, and I really hope that I will have many more years of speaking to many more people, because we got a lot more languages to cover. I'm El Charisse, and I would love it if you would subscribe to this channel, if you would like this video, and you would take a listen to our podcast episodes. We are currently on a little bit of a hiatus, but we'll be back with more episodes. I don't know when, but we'll be back with new episodes very soon. And I would love it if you could listen to them and share them with other people who also like languages and who also care about culture and are interested in this big, beautiful world that we live in. So those are my 5 things, and I will see you in the next video.